Tonight, we will follow the history of the Roman Empire from its formation under Augustus to the end of imperial rule in the western provinces. This will be a long and steady account. It will include emperors, wars, institutions, economic changes, religious developments, and political crises. You may fall asleep at any point. The history will continue quietly without requiring your attention. The Roman Empire did not begin with a single conquest or a formal declaration. It emerged from the collapse of the Roman Republic. For several centuries, Rome had been governed through elected magistrates, popular assemblies, and the Senate. The system had developed when Rome was a city-state. It became increasingly difficult to manage after Roman power expanded across the Mediterranean. By the 1st century before the Common Era, Rome controlled Italy, much of Spain, Greece, North Africa, and large territories in Asia Minor. Roman armies remained in the field for many years. Generals gained wealth, political influence, and the personal loyalty of their soldiers. Internal competition became violent. Political disputes were settled through intimidation, exile, and civil war. Gaius Julius Caesar became one of the most successful generals of this period. Between 58 and 50 before the Common Era, he conquered most of Gaul. His victories gave him money, prestige, and experienced troops. In 49 before the Common Era, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River with his army. This act began a civil war against forces associated with his rival, Pompey. Caesar defeated Pompey's supporters and became dictator. In 44 before the Common Era, he was appointed dictator for life. His concentration of authority alarmed senators who believed that he intended to establish a monarchy. On the 15th of March in 44 before the Common Era, Caesar was assassinated in the Senate House. The conspirators expected the Republic to recover. Instead, another series of civil wars began. Caesar's principal heir was his great-nephew, Gaius Octavius. He is usually known by the later name, Octavian. Octavian formed an alliance with Mark Antony and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. This alliance is called the Second Triumvirate. Unlike many informal Roman political partnerships, it was given legal authority. The triumvirs defeated the armies of Caesar's assassins at Philippi in 42 before the Common Era. They then divided control of Roman territory among themselves. The arrangement did not last. Lepidus was removed from power. Octavian controlled the western provinces. Mark Antony controlled much of the eastern Mediterranean and formed a political and personal partnership with Cleopatra VII, Queen of Egypt. Octavian portrayed Antony as a Roman leader who had become dependent on a foreign monarchy. In 31 before the Common Era, the forces of Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra at the naval battle of Actium. Antony and Cleopatra died the following year. Egypt became a Roman possession. Its agricultural wealth and tax revenues passed under Octavian's control. Octavian was now the dominant figure in the Roman world. He did not abolish the institutions of the Republic. Instead, he placed them under his influence. In 27 before the Common Era, Octavian announced that he was restoring authority to the Senate and the Roman people. The Senate granted him the title Augustus. The word carried religious and political associations. It suggested dignity, authority, and elevated status. This settlement is commonly treated as the beginning of the Roman Empire. Augustus did not normally call himself a king. Roman political culture remained hostile to the title of king. He presented himself as the leading citizen of the state. The Latin term princeps meant first citizen or leading man. For this reason, the early imperial system is often called the Principate. Augustus held several powers at the same time. He possessed authority over important provinces and their armies. He held tribunician power, which gave him political privileges associated with the tribunes of the people. He also possessed superior military authority. The old offices continued to exist. Consuls were elected. Senators debated. Magistrates administered courts and public business. However, the emperor controlled the central decisions of the state. Augustus understood that military control was the foundation of his position. He reduced the enormous armies left by the civil wars. Many soldiers were discharged and settled in colonies. The permanent army was organized into legions. Each legion contained several thousand Roman citizens. The exact strength varied, but a legion at full establishment was commonly expected to contain about 5,000 men. The legions were supported by auxiliary units. Auxiliaries were recruited largely from people who did not yet possess Roman citizenship. They served as infantry, cavalry, archers, and specialists. After a full period of service, auxiliary soldiers could receive Roman citizenship. Military service therefore became one method by which provincial communities were gradually connected to Roman institutions. Augustus established the Praetorian Guard. This was an elite force assigned to protect the emperor and maintain security in Italy. In later centuries, the Guard would sometimes influence imperial succession. He also created a more regular military treasury. New taxes helped provide pensions for discharged soldiers. The purpose was to reduce the dependence of veterans on individual commanders. The empire was divided into provinces. Some were formally administered under the Senate, others remained under direct imperial authority. The provinces controlled by the emperor were usually those containing large military forces or unstable frontiers. Egypt held a special position. It was governed by an equestrian prefect appointed by Augustus. Senators could not enter Egypt without imperial permission. The imperial government was small by modern standards. Much administration remained in the hands of cities, local councils, tax collectors, and provincial elites. Rome did not attempt to impose one uniform culture on every province. Local languages, religious traditions, and legal customs often continued. Provincial communities were expected to maintain order, collect revenue, and demonstrate loyalty. Taxation was essential. Provinces paid direct and indirect taxes. The state collected customs duties, inheritance taxes, sales taxes, and taxes on land or persons depending on the region. Tax collection was not always consistent. Assessments varied. Corruption remained a recurring problem. Augustus attempted to improve censuses and financial supervision. Roads supported military movement and administration. Many Roman roads had first been built during the Republic. Under the empire, the network continued to expand. Official couriers used a system of stations, animals, and vehicles. This imperial transport network is known as the cursus publicus. It allowed messages and officials to move more efficiently, although private use was restricted. Augustus also reorganized the city of Rome. The city was divided into administrative regions. Firefighting and night watch services were developed. Grain distribution was supervised more carefully. Rome's population may have approached 1 million during the early empire, although exact figures remain uncertain. Supplying such a city required enormous quantities of grain, oil, wine, water, fuel, and building material. Much of Rome's grain came from Egypt and North Africa. Ships transported it across the Mediterranean. It was unloaded at ports and moved toward the capital. Aqueducts carried water over long distances. They supplied public fountains, baths, private houses, workshops, and decorative structures. Most residents collected water from public sources rather than receiving it directly inside their homes. Augustus promoted construction throughout the capital. He repaired temples, completed projects begun by earlier leaders, and sponsored new monuments. His building program was political as well as practical. Architecture connected his government with Roman tradition, military victory, and religious order. The Forum of Augustus included a temple dedicated to Mars Ultor, meaning Mars the Avenger. The temple referred to vengeance for the assassination of Julius Caesar and to Roman military success. Augustus also encouraged moral legislation. Laws addressed marriage, adultery, and family formation among the upper classes. The government attempted to increase legitimate marriage and childbirth among Roman citizens. These laws were difficult to enforce. They also produced resentment. Even members of Augustus's own family became involved in scandals that contradicted his public moral program. Augustus presented his rule as a period of restoration. Temples were repaired. Traditional priesthoods were supported. Public ceremonies emphasized stability after decades of civil war. The emperor became increasingly connected to religious practice. In some eastern provinces, ruler cults already had long traditions. Temples and ceremonies honoring Rome and Augustus developed in provincial communities. In Rome itself, the living emperor was not normally treated in exactly the same way as a traditional god. After death, however, a successful emperor could be officially declared divine by the Senate. The imperial cult was not simply a private expression of belief, it was also a public demonstration of political loyalty. Augustus expanded Roman influence through diplomacy and war. Spain was brought under more complete control. Alpine regions were conquered. Roman authority advanced into the Balkans. In the east, Augustus avoided a major invasion of the Parthian Empire. Instead, he negotiated the return of military standards captured from Roman armies in earlier defeats. Roman propaganda represented this diplomatic achievement as a victory. The northern frontier remained difficult. Roman forces moved into territory east of the Rhine and attempted to establish greater control in Germania. In the year 9 of the Common Era, a Roman commander named Publius Quinctilius Battus led 3 legions through northwestern Germany. A coalition led by Arminius ambushed the Roman army in the Teutoburg forest. The 17th, 18th, and 19th legions were destroyed. Their numbers were never used again for Roman legions. The defeat limited Roman expansion beyond the Rhine. Later campaigns entered German territory, but Rome did not establish a permanent provincial system far to the east of the river. The Rhine and Danube gradually became central boundaries of the empire in Europe. Augustus ruled for more than 40 years after receiving his title. His long reign allowed the new political system to become familiar. Succession remained the greatest unresolved problem. Augustus had no surviving son. Several possible heirs died before him. He eventually adopted Tiberius, the adult son of his wife Livia. Tiberius was an experienced commander and administrator. Augustus died in the year 14 of the Common Era. Tiberius succeeded him without a civil war. This peaceful transfer demonstrated that the imperial system could survive the death of its founder. Tiberius ruled from the year 14 to the year 37. He was already in his 50s when he became emperor. His reign was financially cautious. He maintained the frontiers and generally avoided large new conquests. He left a substantial treasury at his death. Tiberius had a difficult relationship with the Senate. Roman sources often portray him as secretive and suspicious. Some of these accounts were written by senators who disliked the reduction of senatorial independence. Trials for treason became an important feature of the political climate. Informers could accuse prominent individuals of insulting the emperor or plotting against the state. The Praetorian prefect Lucius Aelius Sejanus gained considerable influence while Tiberius spent long periods away from Rome. Sejanus may have planned to secure the succession for himself. In the year 31, Tiberius ordered the arrest and execution of Sejanus. His supporters were also prosecuted. Tiberius died in the year 37. He was succeeded by Gaius, better known by the nickname Caligula. Caligula was the son of the popular general Germanicus. His accession was initially welcomed. His reign lasted less than 4 years. Ancient sources describe extravagant spending, humiliations of senators, arbitrary executions, and claims of exceptional personal status. Some famous stories about Caligula may have been exaggerated. Roman historical writing often used anecdotes to present a ruler as either virtuous or tyrannical. It is nevertheless clear that relations between Caligula and the political elite deteriorated severely. In January of the year 41, officers of the Praetorian Guard assassinated him. Members of his household were also killed. The Senate briefly discussed restoring republican government. The Praetorian Guard instead proclaimed Caligula's uncle, Claudius, emperor. Claudius had not previously been treated as a serious political figure. He had physical disabilities and had largely remained outside public competition. As emperor, Claudius proved active in administration. He increased the role of imperial freedmen in managing correspondence, finance, legal petitions, and provincial affairs. Freedmen were former slaves who had been legally released. Some imperial freedmen became extremely wealthy and influential because of their access to the emperor. Senators resented their position. However, the use of trained household officials contributed to the development of a more organized central administration. Claudius expanded Roman citizenship and admitted provincial elites into Roman political life. In a scathing speech, he defended the admission of prominent men from Gaul into the Senate. The policy reflected a long Roman pattern. Rome often incorporated conquered elites rather than excluding them permanently. The most important conquest of Claudius's reign began in the year 43. Roman armies invaded Britain. Julius Caesar had led expeditions to Britain during the Republic, but he had not created a permanent province there. Under Claudius, Roman forces occupied southeastern Britain and advanced gradually north and west. The conquest remained incomplete and required many decades of campaigning. Claudius personally visited Britain for a short period and celebrated a triumph in Rome. His domestic life became a major subject of hostile ancient accounts. His third wife, Messalina, was executed after being accused of conspiracy and an unlawful marriage ceremony with another man. Claudius later married Agrippina the Younger. She was his niece and a member of the imperial family. Agrippina promoted the interests of her son from an earlier marriage. That son was Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, later known as Nero. Claudius adopted Nero. Nero was placed ahead of Claudius's biological son Britannicus in the succession. Claudius died in the year 54. Ancient writers suspected that Agrippina poisoned him, possibly with mushrooms. The evidence is not conclusive. Nero became emperor at the age of 16. During the first years of his reign, government was strongly influenced by Agrippina, the philosopher Seneca, and the praetorian prefect Burrus. Later, Nero attempted to free himself from their control. Britannicus died under suspicious circumstances. Agrippina was killed in the year 59, after several reported attempts on her life. Nero had strong interests in music, poetry, theater, and chariot racing. Roman aristocratic culture permitted private artistic activity, but public performance by an emperor was regarded by many senators as degrading. Nero's participation in competitions offended traditional elite expectations. He believed that artistic achievement was part of his imperial identity. His reign included serious military challenges. In Britain, a revolt led by Queen Boudica broke out in the year 60 or 61. Boudica ruled the Iceni, a people of eastern Britain. After the death of her husband, Roman officials confiscated property and mistreated members of the royal family. The revolt destroyed the Roman settlements at Camulodunum, Londinium, and Verulamium. Many inhabitants were killed. The Roman governor Suetonius Paulinus eventually defeated Boudica's forces. Roman control in southern Britain survived. In the east, Rome fought Parthia over influence in Armenia. The conflict ended with a compromise. An Arsacid prince ruled Armenia but received recognition and ceremonial approval from Rome. In July of the year 64, a major fire burned through Rome for several days. Large sections of the city were destroyed. Nero was not necessarily responsible for starting the fire. The famous story that he performed music while Rome burned is not supported in its common form. He organized relief measures and opened public spaces to displaced residents. He also introduced new building regulations. However, suspicion spread because Nero later used part of the burned area for an enormous palace complex called the Golden House. Roman authorities punished a group identified as Christians. The historian Tacitus reports that Christians were blamed for the fire and subjected to executions. This is one of the earliest detailed references to Christians in a non-Christian Roman source. Christian communities were still small. Roman officials often regarded them as a Jewish-derived religious group that rejected normal civic cults. Nero's financial demands increased. Confiscations and prosecutions affected wealthy Romans. A conspiracy against him was uncovered in the year 65. The conspiracy is called the Pisonian Conspiracy, after Gaius Calpurnius Piso. Numerous senators, officers, and intellectuals were implicated. Seneca was ordered to take his own life. The poet Lucan and other prominent figures also died. Military dissatisfaction eventually ended Nero's reign. In the year 68, provincial governors and armies rebelled. The Senate declared Nero a public enemy. He fled Rome and died by suicide in June of that year. His death ended the Julio-Claudian dynasty. This dynasty had connected the families of Julius Caesar, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero through birth, marriage, and adoption. The imperial office remained, but there was no accepted rule for choosing the next emperor. The year 69 became known as the Year of the Four Emperors. The first was Galba, governor of Hispania Tarraconensis. His forces had supported the rebellion against Nero. Galba entered Rome but failed to gain lasting support. He refused many financial rewards expected by soldiers and dismissed important supporters. In January of the year 69, troops in Germany proclaimed their commander, Vitellius, emperor. Galba attempted to secure the succession by adopting the younger aristocrat. This angered Otho, a former ally who had expected to become heir. Otho gained the support of the Praetorian Guard. Galba was killed in the Roman Forum. Otho became the second emperor of the year. He ruled for approximately 3 months. The armies supporting Vitellius advanced into Italy. Otho's forces were defeated at the First Battle of Bedriacum. Otho took his own life, possibly to prevent further civil conflict. Vitellius then became emperor. Vitellius was supported primarily by the Rhine armies. His government quickly faced another challenger. In the eastern provinces, troops proclaimed Vespasian emperor. Vespasian was an experienced commander directing the Roman war in Judea. His allies controlled Egypt and its grain supply. Other Danubian and eastern armies joined his cause. Forces loyal to Vespasian entered Italy and defeated the Vitellian army at the Second Battle of Bedriacum. Fighting occurred inside Rome. Vitellius was captured and killed in December of the year 69. Vespasian became the fourth emperor of the year and the founder of the Flavian dynasty. The civil war demonstrated that emperors could be created outside Rome. Armies stationed in distant provinces had become decisive political forces. Vespasian ruled from the year 69 to the year 79. He restored financial stability after civil war and the spending of Nero. New taxes were introduced. Existing taxes were collected more rigorously. Vespasian became associated with practical economy and careful administration. He did not belong to the old Julio-Claudian family. His background was comparatively modest. His rise showed that imperial power was no longer restricted to one aristocratic household. Vespasian openly prepared his sons Titus and Domitian for succession. This reduced immediate uncertainty. During his reign, the Jewish revolt that had begun under Nero was defeated. Roman rule in Judea had faced growing resistance caused by taxation, religious conflict, local political divisions, and the conduct of officials. The revolt began in the year 66. Jewish forces initially defeated Roman units and gained control of Jerusalem. Vespasian was assigned to suppress the rebellion. After he became emperor, command passed to his son Titus. In the year 70, Roman forces captured Jerusalem after a long siege. The Second Temple was destroyed. The destruction of the temple transformed Jewish religious and communal life. It also became central to later Jewish historical memory. Roman forces continued operations against remaining strongholds. Masada fell in the year 73 or 74. Spoils from the war helped finance construction in Rome. The most famous Flavian project was the amphitheater, later known as the Colosseum. Its ancient name was the Flavian Amphitheater. Construction began under Vespasian on land previously used for part of Nero's palace. The building could hold tens of thousands of spectators. Exact estimates vary. It hosted gladiatorial combats, animal hunts, executions, and public spectacles. Vespasian died of natural causes in the year 79. His son Titus succeeded him. Titus had already exercised significant authority. His succession was orderly. His reign was brief. It included several disasters. In August of the year 79, Mount Vesuvius erupted. The eruption buried Pompeii, Herculaneum, and nearby settlements beneath volcanic material. The destruction preserved buildings, paintings, inscriptions, food remains, and human bodies. Modern archaeology has used this evidence to reconstruct daily life in Roman Italy. A major fire also damaged Rome during the reign of Titus. An epidemic affected the population. Ancient sources generally present Titus as generous in his response to these events. Titus died in the year 81. His younger brother Domitian became emperor. Domitian ruled for 15 years. He strengthened frontier defenses and increased the pay of the army. He conducted campaigns in Germany and along the Danube. Roman armies fought the Dacians, whose kingdom lay north of the lower Danube. The Dacian king Decebalus proved difficult to defeat. A settlement provided him with money and technical assistance in return for formal submission. Domitian's government was highly centralized. He preferred direct control and placed less importance on maintaining the appearance of senatorial partnership. He served repeatedly as consul and emphasized the authority of the emperor. He also acted as censor for life, giving him influence over the composition and conduct of the Senate. Relations with senators became increasingly hostile. Executions and accusations of conspiracy created fear among the elite. At the same time, provincial administration and military policy remained relatively effective. Modern assessments of Domitian are often less negative than the accounts written by senatorial authors. In September of the year 96, palace officials assassinated Domitian. The Senate selected an elderly senator named Nerva as emperor. The transition began a period often associated with adopted succession. Nerva lacked strong military support. He attempted to secure loyalty through financial measures and political moderation. The Praetorian Guard demanded punishment to Domitian's assassins. Nerva was forced to accept their demands. His weakness demonstrated that senatorial approval alone was not enough. An emperor required military confidence. Nerva adopted Marcus Ulpius Traianus as his son and heir. Trajan was the governor of Upper Germany and a respected commander. Nerva died in the year 98. Trajan succeeded him peacefully. Trajan was born in the Roman province of Baetica in southern Spain. His family was of Italian origin but had long been established in the provinces. He was the first emperor born outside Italy, although he belonged fully to the Roman senatorial elite. Trajan maintained cooperative relations with the Senate. Later tradition described him as an ideal ruler. His reign was also marked by major military expansion. The first great conflict was against Dacia. The Dacian kingdom controlled territory corresponding largely to modern Romania. Dacia possessed agricultural resources, strategic value, and important deposits of gold and silver. Trajan led a campaign from the year 101 to the year 102. Dispolus accepted peace, but continued preparing for renewed resistance. A second war began in the year 105. Roman engineers constructed a large bridge across the Danube under the direction of Apollodorus of Damascus. The Roman armies captured the Dacian capital, Sarmizegetusa. Decebalus died by suicide while attempting to avoid capture. Dacia became a Roman province in the year 106. Roman colonists, soldiers, administrators, and merchants entered the region. The conquest was celebrated through public monuments. Trajan's column in Rome contains a spiral relief depicting scenes from the Dacian campaigns. The column is valuable but must be interpreted carefully. It was an imperial monument, not a neutral documentary record. Trajan also annexed the Nabatean kingdom in Arabia. The new province of Arabia, Petrea, included important routes linking Syria, the Red Sea, and the interior. Later, Trajan launched a major invasion of the Parthian Empire. Rome and Parthia had competed for influence in Armenia and Mesopotamia for generations. The frontier shifted repeatedly. In the year 114, Trajan invaded Armenia. He then moved into Mesopotamia. Roman forces captured the Parthian capital of Ctesiphon. Trajan reached the Persian Gulf. For a brief period, the Roman Empire reached its greatest territorial extent. It included new provinces in Armenia, Assyria, and Mesopotamia. The gains were unstable. Revolts occurred behind the Roman armies. Jewish uprisings also broke out in several eastern provinces during the final years of Trajan's reign. Trajan became ill while returning west. He died in the year 117. Hadrian succeeded him. The exact circumstances of Hadrian's adoption were controversial. Trajan may have adopted him shortly before death, possibly through arrangements managed by the imperial household. Hadrian abandoned most of Trajan's eastern conquests. He concluded that the new territories were too difficult to defend. This decision marked an important change. The empire would still fight wars and adjust its borders, but permanent expansion was no longer the central policy. Hadrian spent much of his reign traveling. He visited provinces, inspected troops, reviewed local administration, and sponsored construction. An emperor's presence could accelerate decisions and strengthen loyalty. It could also impose substantial costs on the communities required to host the imperial court. Hadrian took a strong interest in architecture and Greek culture. He wore a beard, which became common in imperial portraiture after his reign. His building projects included the Pantheon in Rome in its present general form. The original Pantheon had been built under Augustus by Marcus Agrippa. Hadrian reconstructed it after earlier fires. The Pantheon's concrete dome remains one of the most important achievements of Roman engineering. Hadrian is strongly associated with frontier consolidation. In Britain, construction began on Hadrian's Wall in the year 122. The wall crossed northern Britain from the River Tyne to the Solway Firth. It included forts, mile castles, turrets, roads, and defensive earthworks. It did not create an entirely sealed boundary. Movement continued through controlled points. Trade and contact occurred across the frontier. The wall helped regulate movement, support military deployment, and display Roman authority. Similar systems of forts, roads, towers, and barriers existed elsewhere. Roman frontiers were complex military zones rather than simple lines on a map. Hadrian's reign also included a major Jewish revolt in Judea. The Bar Kokhba revolt began in the year 132. Its causes included Roman colonial policies, religious tensions, and possibly plans affecting Jerusalem. The rebels established control over parts of Judea. They produced coins and maintained an organized administration. Rome deployed large forces to suppress the uprising. The fighting was severe. Many settlements were destroyed and the population suffered heavy losses. After the revolt, Jerusalem was developed as the Roman colony, Aelia Capitolina. Judea was increasingly referred to within the province of Syria, Palestina. Hadrian's personal relationship with the young Greek Antinous became another notable feature of his reign. Antinous died in the Nile in the year 130. Hadrian founded a city named Antinopolis and encouraged his commemoration. Antinous was worshipped in many parts of the empire. Statues of him survive in large numbers. Hadrian became ill during his final years. His succession arrangements changed several times. He eventually adopted Antoninus Pius, on the condition that Antoninus adopt Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus. Hadrian died in the year 138. Antoninus Pius ruled for more than 22 years. His reign was comparatively peaceful. He rarely left Italy. Provincial government continued through governors, legal officials, military commanders, and correspondents. The title Pius was connected to his demonstrations of loyalty toward Hadrian, including his efforts to secure Hadrian's deification. Antoninus maintained the frontiers without major expansion. In Britain, Roman forces advanced north and constructed the Antonine Wall across central Scotland. The Antonine Wall was held for only part of the 2nd century. Roman forces later returned to the region of Hadrian's Wall. Antoninus developed Roman law through imperial decisions and legal interpretation. The imperial court became increasingly important as a source of law. Roman law did not exist as one complete code during this period. It developed through statutes, senatorial decrees, decisions of magistrates, juristic writings, local customs, and imperial rulings. Citizens and non-citizens could be governed by different legal principles. Status, gender, freedom, citizenship, and social rank affected legal rights. Slavery remained fundamental to Roman society. Enslaved people worked in agriculture, mines, workshops, households, administration, education, entertainment, and commerce. The conditions of slavery vary greatly. Some urban slaves gained education and responsibility. Others faced extreme physical exploitation. Enslaved people were legally treated as property. Owners possessed extensive powers, although imperial laws introduced limited restrictions on severe abuse. Manumission was common enough to produce a large population of freed people. Freedmen obtained a modified form of citizenship and maintained obligations toward former owners. The children of freed people were normally freeborn citizens. Social mobility was possible, but Roman society remained deeply hierarchical. At the top stood the emperor and the imperial household. The senatorial order contained wealthy families eligible for the highest offices. Below the senators stood the equestrian order. Equestrians served in military commands, provincial administration, finance, and imperial offices. Local elites governed cities throughout the empire. They funded buildings, festivals, baths, water systems, and public distributions. Public generosity helped elites gain status. It also supported urban life. Most inhabitants of the empire were farmers, laborers, craftspeople, traders, tenants, or enslaved workers. Their lives are less completely recorded than those of emperors and senators. Inscriptions provide important evidence. Tombstones, dedications, military diplomas, contracts, graffiti, and official notices preserve names and occupations that literary histories often ignore. Papyri from Egypt preserve tax records, private letters, legal petitions, marriage agreements, and accounts. Archaeology also reveals regional differences. There was no single Roman way of life experienced identically across the empire. A resident of Alexandria, a soldier on the Rhine, a farmer in Syria, and a merchant in southern Gaul all lived within the Roman system, but their languages, foods, religious practices, and daily routines could differ substantially. Greek remained the dominant language of the Eastern Mediterranean. Latin was central to government and the army in the West. Educated Romans often knew both languages. Roman literature drew heavily from Greek models. If you are still listening, you may simply allow the names and dates to pass without trying to remember them. The structure of the empire can remain in the background. Antoninus Pius died in the year 161. Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus became joint emperors. Joint rule was unusual, but not entirely unprecedented in practice. Marcus held greater prestige, while Lucius received equal imperial titles. Lucius Verus directed a war against Parthia. Roman armies recovered Armenia and invaded Mesopotamia. They captured and sacked Ctesiphon in the year 165. The war ended with Roman success. Returning troops may have helped spread a destructive epidemic through the empire. This outbreak is called the Antonine Plague. The exact disease remains uncertain. Smallpox is frequently suggested, but the diagnosis cannot be confirmed. The epidemic began around the year 165 and returned in waves. It caused high mortality in cities, rural communities, and the army. Ancient numerical claims are difficult to verify. Modern estimates also vary widely. The epidemic nevertheless created serious demographic and economic strain. Lucius Verus died in the year 169. Marcus Aurelius then ruled alone. The northern frontier came under pressure from groups beyond the Danube. These included the Marcomanni, Quadi, and other peoples. The causes were complex. Population movements, competition for land, internal politics, and pressure from groups farther north and east may all have contributed. The Marcomannic Wars occupied much of Marcus's later reign. Invaders crossed the Danube and entered imperial territory. Some reached northern Italy. This demonstrated that the frontier defenses could be breached. Marcus spent long periods near the Danube. The wars required recruitment, taxation, and financial measures. Gladiators, slaves, and other groups were recruited during periods of emergency. Imperial property was reportedly sold to raise funds. Marcus planned to create new provinces beyond the Danube, but the project was not completed. He is also known for a private philosophical work now called the Meditations. Marcus wrote it in Greek. The text contains reflections based largely on Stoic philosophy. It was not written as a public history of his reign. It records personal reminders about duty, self-control, mortality, and rational conduct. Marcus did not rule according to a modern ideal of philosophical tolerance in every matter. During his reign, Christians faced local persecutions. The imperial government did not yet conduct one continuous empire-wide campaign against Christianity, but officials could punish Christians who refused required acts of public worship. The execution of Christians at Lugdunum, modern Lyon, occurred in the year 177. Marcus Aurelius died in the year 190 while campaigning near the Danube. His biological son, Commodus, succeeded him. The succession of Commodus ended the pattern in which several emperors had adopted mature and capable heirs. However, adoption had often occurred because those emperors lacked surviving sons. Commodus was 19 years old when he became sole emperor. He concluded peace on the northern frontier and returned to Rome. His reign gradually became more unstable. Commodus relied heavily on court favorites, chamberlains, and praetorian prefects. Several officials gained power and then fell through conspiracy or execution. A failed assassination attempt in the year 182 involved his sister Lucilla. After this event, Commodus became increasingly suspicious. He associated himself with Hercules and presented himself in divine or heroic forms. He also participated in gladiatorial displays. Emperors commonly attended arena events, but direct participation was considered improper by the senatorial elite. Commodus fought opponents who were often equipped or arranged in ways that minimized danger to him. He also killed animals in staged hunts. These performances were expensive and politically provocative. In the year 192, Rome was renamed in his honor. Months and institutions also received new names connected with the emperor. On the last day of that year, members of the imperial household organized his assassination. A wrestler named Narcissus strangled him. Commodus's death ended the Antonine dynasty and began another civil conflict. The Senate selected Pertinax as emperor. Pertinax was an experienced soldier, governor, and administrator. He attempted to restore financial discipline and military order. The Praetorian Guard disliked his reforms. After fewer than 3 months, guardsmen entered the palace and killed him. The Praetorians then offered imperial power to competing candidates. Ancient accounts describe the event as an auction of the empire. Didius Julianus secured the support of the Guard by promising large payments. The Senate recognized him under pressure. Provincial armies rejected the result. 3 major commanders were proclaimed emperor. Septimius Severus was supported by the Danubian legions. Pescennius Niger was supported in the east. Clodius Albinus controlled Britain and had influence in Gaul. Septimius Severus moved rapidly toward Rome. Didius Julianus lost support and was executed in June of the year 193. Severus initially reached an arrangement with Albinus and then campaigned against Niger. Niger was defeated near Issus in the year 194. Severus punished cities and individuals that had supported him. The temporary partnership with Albinus later collapsed. Albinus declared himself emperor and moved forces from Britain into Gaul. In the year 197, Severus defeated him at the Battle of Lugdunum. It was one of the largest battles fought between Roman armies. Septimius Severus was now the undisputed emperor. He was born at Leptis Magna in North Africa. His family belonged to the wealthy provincial elite. His rise reflected the increasing importance of provincial aristocracies and frontier armies. Severus based his authority openly on military power. He increased soldiers' pay and permitted changes in military family life. Roman soldiers had previously faced formal restrictions on legal marriage during service. Under the Severan system, military households received greater recognition. He also expanded recruitment and strengthened the army's financial privileges. The cost of the military increased. The government required higher revenue and made greater use of currency debasement. Roman silver coins had already declined in purity over time. Under the Severans, the silver content of the denarius fell further. Debasement allowed the state to produce more coins from a limited supply of precious metal. It could support short-term payments, but contributed to long-term monetary instability. Severus reduced the authority of the old Praetorian Guard. He dismissed its members and replaced them with soldiers drawn largely from the legions. He also stationed a new legion near Rome. This increased direct military pressure on the capital. Severus fought Parthia and captured Ctesiphon in the year 198. Northern Mesopotamia was organized more firmly under Roman control. The emperor promoted his family as a new dynasty. His wife, Julia Domna, came from a prominent priestly family in Emesa in Syria. Julia Domna received major public honors and participated in the intellectual and political life of the court. The couple had two sons, Caracalla and Geta. Severus intended them to rule together. During his final years, Severus campaigned in Britain. Roman forces attempted to strengthen control in the north and carried out operations in Caledonia. Severus died at Aberacum, modern York, in the year 211. According to a later tradition, he advised his sons to remain united, enrich the soldiers, and disregard everyone else. The exact wording may be literary, but it reflects the military character of his reign. Caracalla and Geta succeeded jointly. The relationship was hostile. The imperial palace was reportedly divided into separate areas. Supporters of each brother competed for influence. In December of the year 201, Wadamotion, Geta was murdered in the presence of their mother. Caracalla claimed that he had acted in self-defense. Geta's supporters were killed or removed. Geta's name and image were erased from many public monuments. This practice is commonly described by the modern term, domitio memoriae. Erasure was never complete. Traces of removed names and portraits often remain visible, which allows historians to identify the process. Caracalla ruled alone. In the year 212, he issued the Constitutio Antonina Iana. This decree granted Roman citizenship to nearly all free inhabitants of the empire. Before this decree, citizenship had expanded gradually through military service, grants to communities, individual rewards, and family inheritance. The decree reduced the legal distinction between citizens and most free provincials. Its motives remain debated. It may have expressed an ideology of imperial unity. It also expanded the number of people liable for certain taxes associated with citizens. Citizenship did not create social equality. Legal privilege continued to depend heavily on rank. Roman law increasingly distinguished between the honestores and the humiliores. The honestores included senators, equestrians, soldiers, local officials, and other people of recognized status. The humiliores included much of the ordinary population. Criminal punishments could differ sharply. High-status defendants might face exile or loss of property. Lower-status defendants could face forced labor, flogging, crucifixion, or exposure to animals. Caracalla is associated with the large public baths that bear his name in Rome. The baths of Caracalla contained heated rooms, cold pools, exercise spaces, gardens, libraries, and service areas. Roman bath complexes were major social institutions. People visited them for washing, exercise, business, conversation, and leisure. Admission fees were often low. Some access could be sponsored by wealthy patrons or emperors. The baths required extensive water supplies, fuel, labor, and maintenance. Caracalla spent much of his reign with the army. He admired Alexander the Great and attempted to associate himself with Macedonian military tradition. In the year 217, while campaigning against Parthia, Caracalla was assassinated by a soldier. The Praetorian prefect Macrinus was proclaimed emperor. Macrinus was the first emperor who had risen from the equestrian order without first entering the Senate. He attempted to reduce military expenses. This damaged his support among soldiers. Members of the Severan family organized opposition. Julia Maesa, the sister of Julia Domna, promoted her grandson Elagabalus as the illegitimate son of Caracalla. Troops in Syria proclaimed Elagabalus emperor. Macrinus was defeated and executed in the year 218. Elagabalus was a teenager. He had served as hereditary priest of the sun god Elagabal in Emesa. He brought the cult and its sacred stone to Rome. He attempted to place his god in a dominant position within Roman public religion. Roman religion had long absorbed foreign deities. The main problem was not simply that the god came from Syria. The emperor's ceremonial behavior, marriages, appointments, and disregard for senatorial customs created political hostility. Ancient descriptions of Elagabalus contain sensational accusations about sex, gender, religion, and luxury. Many were written by hostile authors and cannot be accepted without caution. His government lost support within the army and imperial household. Julia Maesa shifted her support to another grandson, Severus Alexander. In the year 222, the Praetorian Guard killed Elagabalus and his mother. Severus Alexander became emperor. Severus Alexander was also young. His mother, Julia Momea, exercised considerable influence. His government attempted to restore cooperation with the Senate and present a more conventional public image. The empire now faced stronger pressure on its eastern frontier. The Parthian kingdom had been weakened by internal conflict. In the year 224, Ardashir I defeated the last major Parthian king. Ardashir founded the Sasanian Empire. The Sasanians ruled from Iran and claimed authority over territories formerly associated with earlier Persian empires. They created a more centralized and aggressive rival than Parthia had often been. Sasanian armies attacked Roman positions in Mesopotamia. Severus Alexander led an eastern campaign. Roman sources present the result as a success, but the evidence suggests mixed and costly operations. The emperor then moved to the Rhine, where Germanic groups were threatening Roman territory. He attempted to negotiate and possibly pay subsidies. Soldiers interpreted this as weakness. In the year 235, troops near Mainz killed Severus Alexander and his mother. They proclaimed Maximinus Thrax emperor. This event is commonly treated as the beginning of the crisis of the 3rd century. The crisis was not one uninterrupted collapse. Different regions experienced different conditions. Some institutions continued to function. However, between the year 235 and the year 284, the empire faced repeated civil wars, frontier invasions, epidemics, currency instability, and rapid changes of ruler. Maximinus Thrax was a career soldier. Ancient sources emphasize his enormous physical size and low social origins, although some details are exaggerated. He did not visit Rome during his reign. He remained with the armies on the northern frontier. Maximinus increased military expenditure and demanded resources from cities and landowners. Opposition began in North Africa in the year 238. Local landowners killed an unpopular financial official and proclaimed the elderly governor Gordian the first emperor. Gordian made his son, Gordian II, co-emperor. The Senate supported them and declared Maximinus an innocent enemy. The African revolt quickly failed. The governor of Numidia remained loyal to Maximinus. His forces defeated the supporters of the Gordians. Gordian II was killed. Gordian I then died by suicide. The Senate appointed 2 emperors, Pubienus and Balbinus. It also gave imperial rank to the young Gordian III, grandson of Gordian I. Maximinus marched into Italy. His army encountered supply problems while besieging Aquileia. His own soldiers killed him and his son. Pubienus and Balbinus then quarreled. The Praetorian Guard entered the palace and murdered both men. Gordian III became sole emperor at approximately 13 years of age. 6 emperors had received recognition during the year 238. It became known as the Year of the 6 Emperors. Gordian's government was directed by senior officials. The most important was the Praetorian prefect Timesitheus, who became the emperor's father-in-law. A large Roman campaign advanced against the Sasanian Empire. Roman forces recovered territory and won a battle at Rassena. Timesitheus died during the campaign. Philip the Arab replaced him as Praetorian prefect. Gordian died in the year 244. The circumstances are uncertain. Roman sources often claimed that Philip arranged his murder. A Persian inscription suggests that Gordian died after a Roman defeat. Philip became emperor and negotiated peace with the Sasanian king Shapur I. Philip was born in the Roman province of Arabia. His later nickname, the Arab, refers to this origin. In the year 248, Rome celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its traditional foundation. According to Roman chronology, Romulus had founded the city in 753 before the Common Era. Philip organized games and ceremonies for the millennium. His reign was disturbed by usurpations and frontier attacks. Troops near the Danube proclaimed Decius emperor. Philip was defeated and killed in the year 249. Decius faced invasions by the Goths across the Danube. The term Goth referred to several changing groups rather than one fully unified nation. In the year 250, Decius issued an order requiring inhabitants of the empire to perform sacrifice for the gods and the safety of the emperor. Officials issued certificates confirming compliance. Some of these certificates survive on papyrus from Egypt. The order may have been intended as a general act of religious and political unity. Christians who refused to sacrifice faced imprisonment, coercion, or execution. Some complied. Some obtained certificates without sacrificing. Others resisted. The policy produced a serious crisis within Christian communities over how to treat those who had abandoned the faith under pressure. Decius continued campaigning against the Goths. In the year 251, his army was defeated at Abritus. Decius and his son were killed. He was the first Roman emperor known to have died in battle against a foreign enemy. Trebonianus Gallus became emperor. He accepted a settlement that allowed the Goths to withdraw with captives and payments. An epidemic spread through the empire during this period. It is known as the Plague of Cyprian, after the Christian bishop who described its effects. The identity of the disease remains uncertain. It continued in waves for many years. Military units, cities, tax systems, and agricultural production were affected by population loss and disruption. A commander named Aemilian defeated Gothic forces and was proclaimed emperor by his soldiers. Gallus was killed by his own troops. Aemilian then faced another army led by Valerian. Aemilian's soldiers killed him after a reign of only a few months. Valerian became emperor in the year 253. He appointed his adult son Gallienus as co-emperor. Valerian concentrated on the eastern provinces. Gallienus operated mainly in the west. The division of responsibility reflected the size of the military emergency. On the Rhine and Danube, Franks, Alemanni, Goths, and other groups crossed imperial borders or raided Roman territory. In the east, Shapur I invaded Roman provinces. The Sasanians captured Antioch, one of the largest cities of the empire. Valerian led an army against them. In the year 260, Valerian was defeated near Edessa and captured by Shapur. No previous Roman emperor had been taken alive by a foreign king. Sasanian reliefs show Shapur in a position of triumph over Roman emperors. Persian inscriptions presented the capture as a major royal victory. Later Roman stories claim that Valerian was subjected to elaborate humiliation. These accounts may contain hostile invention. His capture was enough to demonstrate the seriousness of Rome's position. Gallienus became sole emperor, but several commanders and provincial rulers claimed imperial authority. The empire fragmented into regional political systems. In the west, Postumus established control over Gaul, Britain, and parts of Spain and Germany. This state is commonly called the Gallic Empire. Its rulers used Roman titles, coins, offices, and military institutions. Postumus did not present himself as the king of an independent Gallic nation. He claimed to be a legitimate Roman emperor. His government defended the Rhine frontier and maintained regional administration. In the east, the city of Palmyra became increasingly powerful. Palmyra was a wealthy commercial center in Syria. Its merchants participated in long-distance trade linking the Roman Mediterranean with Mesopotamia and regions farther east. A Palmyrene leader named Augustus organized resistance to the Sasanians. He defeated Persian forces and recovered Roman territory. Gallienus recognized Augustus's authority and military role. After Augustus was assassinated, power passed to his widow Zenobia, acting for her young son Vaballathus. Zenobia's forces took control of Egypt and much of the Roman East. Like the Gallic rulers, the Palmyrene court initially used Roman political language. Its relationship with the central government became openly hostile only gradually. Gallienus introduced important military reforms. He relied more heavily on mobile cavalry forces that could respond to invasions and usurpations. He also reduced the direct military role of senators. Equestrian officers increasingly commanded legions and governed important military provinces. This change reflected professional requirements and political distrust. Gallienus supported a more tolerant policy toward Christians. Earlier measures of persecution were ended, and confiscated property was restored in some cases. His reign remained dominated by military emergencies. In the year 268, Gallienus was assassinated during the siege of a rival claimant at Mediolanum, modern Milan. Claudius II became emperor. He later received the title Gothicus after defeating Gothic forces at the Battle of Naissus. The scale and exact sequence of the Gothic invasions are difficult to reconstruct. Large groups entered the Balkans and the Aegean region, attacking cities and coastal areas. Roman victories reduced the immediate threat. Claudius died of disease in the year 2770. After a brief struggle involving his brother Quintillus, the army proclaimed Aurelian emperor. Aurelian ruled for only about 5 years, but his reign was decisive. He fought several groups along the Danube and in Italy. He abandoned the exposed province of Dacia, north of the Danube. The withdrawal shortened the frontier. Roman administration and many settlers were moved south of the river. Aurelian also ordered the construction of new walls around Rome. The old defensive boundary was no longer sufficient. Rome had remained largely unwalled for centuries because enemies had seemed distant. The Aurelian walls enclosed a large area of the capital. Much of the structure survives. Aurelian then moved against the Palmyrene state. Zenobia and her forces were defeated in Syria. Palmyra surrendered in the year 272. Zenobia was captured while attempting to escape toward the Euphrates. Later traditions disagree about her fate. Some say she appeared in Aurelian's triumph and then lived in Italy. The evidence is uncertain. Palmyra rebelled again after Aurelian departed. He returned and punished the city more severely. Aurelian next confronted the Gallic Empire. Its ruler, Tetricus, commanded territories in Gaul and Britain. The regional state had weakened through internal conflict. In the year 274, Aurelian defeated or received the surrender of Tetricus at the Battle of Chalons. The empire was politically reunited. Aurelian received the title Restitutor Orbis, meaning restorer of the world. He attempted to strengthen the currency and reorganize the mint system. Monetary reform was difficult. Coin values depended on public confidence, tax demands, metal supply, and market conditions. Prices had risen sharply during the 3rd century. Regional variation was substantial, and the exact scale of inflation is difficult to calculate. Aurelian promoted the cult of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. A major temple was dedicated in Rome. The cult may have served as a unifying religious symbol connected with imperial victory. Aurelian was preparing another Eastern campaign when members of his staff assassinated him in the year 275. The plot may have begun when an official feared punishment and falsely claimed that several officers were marked for execution. A short period of uncertainty followed. Tacitus became emperor, but died after several months. Varianus then claimed power and was defeated by Probus. Probus ruled from the year 276 to the year 282. He fought on the Rhine, Danube, and eastern frontiers. He also defeated several internal claimants. Ancient sources state that he used soldiers for civilian labor, including agricultural and construction projects. The army killed Probus during a mutiny. The Praetorian prefect Carus became emperor. He appointed his sons Carinus and Numerian as imperial colleagues. Carus invaded Sasanian territory and captured Ctesiphon. He died during the campaign. Sources offered different explanations, including illness, assassination, and a lightning strike. Numerian died while the army was returning west. His death was concealed for a time, possibly because his body was being carried in a closed litter. When the death became known, the army proclaimed an officer named Diocles emperor. Diocles adopted the name Diocletian. Carinus controlled the west and fought Diocletian in the year 285. Carinus was killed during or shortly after the Battle of the Margus River. Diocletian became sole ruler of the Roman world. His accession in the year 284 is often used to mark the end of the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire had survived, but the earlier political system had been transformed. The Augustan Principate had preserved many republican forms. Emperors had usually presented themselves as first citizens, even when they exercised overwhelming power. The rulers of the late 3rd century adopted a more openly monarchical style. Diocletian expanded the imperial court, reorganized administration, increased taxation, and created a new structure of shared rule. The changes did not occur in one moment. Some had begun under earlier emperors. Diocletian made them more systematic. He first appointed Maximian as Caesar, or junior emperor, in the year 285. The following year, Maximian became Augustus and ruled as Diocletian's imperial colleague. Diocletian concentrated mainly on the eastern regions. Maximian operated mainly in the west. Both men faced military rebellions and frontier threats. A naval commander named Carausius established control over Britain and part of northern Gaul. Carausius had been assigned to suppress piracy in the English Channel. He was accused of keeping captured wealth and declared himself emperor. His regime produced Roman-style coinage and presented itself as legitimate. The central government required several years to recover the territory. In the year 293, Diocletian expanded the system by appointing 2 junior emperors. Galerius became Caesar under Diocletian. Constantius Chorus became Caesar under Maximian. The 4-ruler system is called the Tetrarchy. There were 2 senior Augusti and 2 junior Caesars. Each emperor received responsibility for particular regions and armies. The empire was not legally divided into 4 separate states. Laws and official messages emphasized unity. Each ruler maintained a court and operated near important military zones. Diocletian based himself at locations such as Nicomedia. Galerius operated in the Balkans and later at Thessalonica. Maximian used Milan and other western centers. Constantius operated in Gaul and Britain. Rome remained symbolically important, but it was no longer the normal residence of the emperors. The Tetrarchy attempted to solve several problems. It placed emperors closer to threatened frontiers. It allowed multiple armies to respond at the same time. It also provided designated junior successors. The arrangement depended on cooperation between powerful men. It had no reliable mechanism for handling the ambitions of their sons and supporters. Constantius defeated forces associated with Carausius's successor, Electus. Britain returned to central imperial control in the year 296. Galerius fought the Sasanian Empire. An early Roman campaign ended in defeat. Diocletian reportedly humiliated Galerius for the failure. Although later accounts may dramatize the scene, a second campaign in the year 298 produced a major Roman victory. The peace settlement gave Rome influence over Armenia and control of territories beyond the Tigris. It was one of Rome's strongest eastern settlements. Diocletian reorganized provincial government. Large provinces were divided into smaller units. This reduced the resources available to individual governors and made supervision more direct. Several provinces were grouped into administrative units called dioceses. Officials known as vicars supervised them. Civil and military authority became more clearly separated in many areas. Earlier governors had often commanded troops and managed civilian administration at the same time. The late Roman system increasingly assigned these responsibilities to different officials. This reduced the danger that a single provincial governor could use both administrative resources and an army to rebel. It also increased the number of officials and the complexity of government. The army was reorganized. Although the full late Roman structure developed over several reigns, forces remained stationed along the frontiers. Other units were available for movement between regions. Fortifications were repaired or expanded. New forts protected roads, river crossings, deserts, and mountain routes. The state required more predictable taxation to support the army, bureaucracy, and imperial courts. Diocletian's government carried out censuses and assessments. Land, labor, crops, animals, and population could all be included in tax calculations. Tax obligations were often expressed through units combining land and human productive capacity. The exact system differed by region and changed over time. Taxes were frequently collected in kind. Grain, animals, clothing, equipment, and other supplies could be delivered directly to the state. Payments in kind were useful when currency values were unstable. The burden could be heavy. Communities were held collectively responsible for meeting assessments. Local council members, known in many areas as decurions, had to organize collection. They could be required to cover shortfalls from their own property. Municipal office had once been a major honor. By the late Empire, its financial duties could make it undesirable. People sometimes attempted to avoid appointment. The state responded by making many obligations hereditary or compulsory. Diocletian also attempted to reform the currency. New gold, silver, and bronze denominations were introduced. The reforms did not fully solve inflation or restore confidence. In the year 301, the government issued the Edict on Maximum Prices. The edict listed maximum legal prices for hundreds of goods, services, and wages. It covered food, clothing, transport, animals, raw materials, and skilled labor. Violations could receive severe punishment. Fragments of the edict survive in inscriptions from the Eastern Empire. The measure shows the government's concern about rising prices and profiteering. It was difficult to enforce across the enormous and diverse Roman economy. The edict did not permanently control inflation. Diocletian's court ceremony emphasized distance between ruler and subject. Access to the emperor became more formal. Imperial clothing, titles, gestures, and rituals expressed elevated status. Some visitors were expected to perform proskynesis, a formal act of obeisance. Romans had previously associated such behavior with Eastern monarchy. Under the late Empire, it became part of imperial court culture. The emperor was increasingly described as dominus, meaning lord or master. Modern historians sometimes called the late imperial system the dominate, in contrast with the earlier principate. The distinction is useful but should not be treated as an absolute division. Early emperors had possessed monarchical power, and late emperors continued to use Roman legal traditions. Diocletian also attempted to reinforce traditional religion. Roman religion was highly varied. It included public cults, local gods, household rites, mystery religions, philosophical beliefs, and imported deities. The state did not normally demand exclusive belief. People could participate in multiple cults. The central expectation was proper ritual. Sacrifice and ceremony maintained the relationship between communities and the gods. Christians rejected sacrifice to the traditional gods. They worshipped one god and denied the divine status of other deities. Christian communities had grown during the 3rd century. They were found in cities and rural areas across many provinces. Their members included poor laborers, merchants, soldiers, women of wealthy households, educated writers, and local officials. Churches developed structured leadership through bishops, priests, and deacons. Bishops supervised local communities, managed charitable resources, settled disputes, and communicated with other churches. Christians disagreed over doctrine and authority. There was no single centralized institution controlling every community. Imperial authorities had sometimes persecuted Christians under earlier rulers. The intensity varied by region and period. Diocletian's government began the largest official persecution in Roman imperial history. The first edict was issued in the year 303. Church buildings were to be destroyed. Christian scriptures were to be surrendered. Christians could lose legal privileges and public positions. Later measures ordered the arrest of clergy and required sacrifice. Enforcement varied. It was especially severe in parts of the Eastern Empire under Diocletian and Galerius. In territories controlled by Constantius, the measures appear to have been applied more lightly. Many Christians complied under pressure. Others were imprisoned or executed. Some avoided detection. Christian accounts preserve stories of martyrs who refused sacrifice. The persecution did not eliminate Christianity. It weakened some communities and created internal disputes, but the religion continued to spread. By this point, Diocletian had ruled for about 2 decades. In the year 305, Diocletian and Maximian formally abdicated. Voluntary abdication by a Roman emperor was extremely unusual. Galerius and Constantius became the new Augusti. 2 new Caesars, Severus and Maximinus Daia, were appointed. The sons of Maximian and Constantius were excluded from the planned succession. Maximian's son was Maxentius. Constantius' son was Constantine. Their exclusion contributed to the rapid breakdown of the tetrarchic system. Constantius died at York in Britain in the year 306. His soldiers proclaimed Constantine emperor. Galerius did not fully accept the proclamation. He recognized Constantine only as Caesar. In Rome, Maxentius organized a revolt and declared himself emperor. Maximian returned from retirement and supported his son. Severus attempted to suppress Maxentius but was defeated and later killed. Several emperors and claimants now competed for authority. Diocletian briefly returned to political activity for a conference at Carnuntum in the year 308. The conference attempted to restore order. Licinius was appointed Augustus. The settlement failed because it did not remove the military and dynastic ambitions of the other rulers. Maximian later rebelled against Constantine. Constantine defeated him, and Maximian died in the year 310. Galerius became seriously ill. In the year 311, shortly before his death, he issued an edict ending the persecution of Christians in his territories. The edict allowed Christians to assemble, provided that they maintained public order and prayed for the welfare of the state. After Galerius's death, the principal rivals included Constantine, Maxentius, Licinius, and Maximinus Daia. Constantine controlled Britain, Gaul, and Spain. Maxentius controlled Italy and parts of North Africa. In the year 312, Constantine invaded Italy. He won several battles and approached Rome. The decisive confrontation occurred at the Milvian Bridge on the 28th of October. Later Christian sources state that Constantine experienced a vision or dream connected with the Christian god before the battle. The accounts differ in detail. One describes a sign in the sky, another describes instructions to place a Christian symbol on soldiers' shields. Constantine defeated Maxentius. Maxentius drowned in the Tiber during the retreat. Constantine entered Rome as victor. The Senate dedicated the Arch of Constantine to commemorate the campaign. The arch reused sculptures taken from monuments of earlier emperors, including Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. Its inscription credited Constantine's victory to divine inspiration, but it did not name the Christian god directly. In the year 313, Constantine and Licinius met at Milan. They agreed on a policy of religious toleration. The arrangement is commonly called the Edict of Milan, although the surviving text is preserved as a later letter. Christians and other religious groups received freedom of worship. Confiscated Christian property was to be returned. This did not yet make Christianity the official religion of the empire. Traditional cults continued. Constantine used both Christian and older imperial religious language during the early part of his reign. He increasingly supported Christian institutions. Bishops received privileges. Churches obtained property and financial assistance. Clergy gained certain exemptions. Constantine also became involved in disputes within Christianity. In North Africa, Christians disagreed over the status of clergy who had surrendered scriptures during the persecution. One group, later called the Donatists, argued that clergy who had betrayed the faith could not validly perform sacred functions. Their opponents maintained that the validity of sacraments did not depend on the personal purity of the priest. Constantine supported the opponents of the Donatists. Imperial officials attempted to settle the dispute through councils and legal decisions. The conflict continued for generations. It demonstrated that imperial support did not create immediate unity within Christianity. Meanwhile, Licinius defeated Maximinus Daia in the east. By the year 313, Constantine and Licinius were the two principal emperors. Their partnership became hostile. War occurred in the year 316 or 317. A temporary settlement divided territory and appointed new Caesars. Renewed conflict began in the year 324. Constantine defeated Licinius in battles at Adrianople and Chrysopolis. Licinius surrendered. He was later executed, despite an initial promise that his life would be spared. Constantine became sole ruler of the Roman Empire. He then founded a new imperial capital at the site of Byzantium on the Bosporus. The location connected Europe and Asia. It stood near important routes linking the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, the Balkans, and the eastern provinces. The city was expanded with walls, palaces, forums, churches, baths, and public buildings. It was dedicated in the year 330 as Constantinople, the city of Constantine. The city was also officially described as New Rome. Rome remained a major center of population, ceremony, aristocratic wealth, and religious authority. However, Constantinople was better placed for an emperor concerned with the Danube and eastern frontiers. Constantine established a senate in the new capital. Over time, Constantinople developed its own aristocracy and administrative institutions. The city received grain distributions and imperial patronage. Constantine continued the administrative changes of the Tetrarchic period. The empire was organized through layers of prefectures, dioceses, and provinces. The highest civilian officials included praetorian prefects. Their role had changed from commanding the imperial guard to supervising large administrative regions. Military command was increasingly held by officers with titles such as Magister Peditum, Master of Infantry, and Magister Equitum, Master of Cavalry. The imperial field armies became more important. Units attached to mobile imperial forces were often called comitatenses. Frontier troops were commonly described as limitanae. These categories developed over time and were not always rigid. The late Roman army remained large and complex. Estimates of total strength vary because records are incomplete and unit sizes change. The army included Roman citizens, provincial recruits, hereditary military families, volunteers, conscripts, and foreign troops. Some groups from beyond the frontiers entered Roman service under collective agreements. Roman military identity was not based on one ethnicity. Soldiers came from across the empire and neighboring regions. Constantine introduced a stable gold coin called the solidus. The solidus weighed approximately 4.5 grams and maintained high purity for centuries. It became the foundation of late Roman and later Byzantine monetary systems. Gold currency served the government, army, long-distance trade, and wealthy classes. Bronze and silver coinage continued, but experienced more instability. Taxation remained demanding. The state needed to support armies, courts, officials, construction, and the grain supply of major cities. Occupations and social obligations became more regulated. Some laws attempted to keep people in hereditary professions. Sons of soldiers, bakers, transport workers, and municipal officials could face pressure to continue family duties. Tenant farmers were increasingly tied to the estates they cultivated. These tenants are often called coloni. They were legally free, but restrictions on movement became stronger. The system was not identical to medieval serfdom, though later institutions developed partly from late Roman conditions. Large estates expanded in some regions. Wealthy landowners could exercise extensive local influence. Small farmers continued to exist. Rural organization varied across Egypt, Syria, North Africa. Gaul, Italy, and the Balkans. Constantine's reign also transformed the relationship between Christianity and imperial government. A major doctrinal dispute began in Alexandria. A priest named Arius taught that the Son, or Christ, had been created by God the Father and was not eternal in exactly the same way as the Father. Arius's opponents argued that the Son was fully divine and eternal. The debate involved scripture, philosophy, worship, and the nature of salvation. It spread through Eastern Christian communities. Bishops, clergy, and imperial officials became involved. Constantine wanted religious agreement because he believed unity in worship supported political order. In the year 325, he summoned bishops to a council at Nicaea in Asia Minor. Several hundred bishops attended, mostly from the eastern provinces. The council produced a creed stating that the Son was of the same substance as the Father. The Greek term was homoousios. Arius and several supporters were condemned. However, the decision did not end the dispute. Some bishops objected to the terminology. Imperial policy changed several times. Exiled clergy returned, and former allies became opponents. Constantine himself was baptized only near the end of his life. Delayed baptism was not unusual. Some Christians believed baptism was not unusual. Some Christians believed baptism removed previous sins and therefore postponed it. The bishop who baptized Constantine, Eusebius of Nicomedia, had been associated with positions sympathetic to Arius. Constantine did not fully abandon traditional imperial customs. He retained the title Pontifex Maximus, the chief priestly title of Roman state religion. Coins and monuments from parts of his reign continued to use imagery associated with the sun. His religious policy developed gradually, rather than changing in one simple moment. Constantine restricted some traditional sacrifices and supported church construction. He did not close all temples or prohibit all non-Christian worship. Large churches were built in Rome, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Constantinople, and other cities. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem was constructed near a site identified as the place of Christ's crucifixion and burial. Constantine's mother Helena became associated with pilgrimage and the discovery of relics connected with the crucifixion. The historical details of these traditions are difficult to establish. Within the imperial family, Constantine's reign included violence. His eldest son Crispus was executed in the year 326. Soon afterward, Constantine's wife Fausta also died, possibly through execution. Ancient sources offered conflicting explanations involving accusations of sexual misconduct and conspiracy. The true sequence of events remains uncertain. Constantine spent his final years preparing for war against the Sasanian Empire. He became ill and died near Nicomedia in the year 337. He left the empire to his three surviving sons, Constantine II, Constans, and Constantius II. Other male relatives were killed soon after his death, probably to reduce competition for power. The three brothers divided imperial territory. Constantine II received Britain, Gaul, and Spain. Constans controlled Italy, Africa, and parts of the Balkans. Constantius II governed the eastern provinces. The arrangement did not remain peaceful. Constantine II attempted to assert authority over Constans. He invaded Italy and was killed in the year 340. Constans then controlled most of the west. He supported the Nicene position in Christian theology. Constantius favored bishops who rejected or modified the Nicene formula. Theological disagreement became linked to imperial rivalry. In the year 350, a military officer named Magnentius rebelled against Constans. Constans was captured and killed. Magnentius controlled much of the west. Constantius ended his eastern war preparations and moved against him. The armies fought at the Battle of Mursa Major in the year 351. The battle caused enormous casualties on both sides. Constantius won, but the Roman army lost many experienced soldiers. Magnentius continued resistance until the year 353, when he died by suicide. Constantius became sole emperor. His reign involved continuing war with the Sasanian king Shapur II. The eastern conflict centered on fortresses and cities in Mesopotamia. Nisibis resisted several Persian sieges. The frontier war consumed resources but produced no permanent conquest for either side during much of the reign. Constantius also faced pressure along the Rhine. Germanic groups, including Alemanni and Franks, crossed into Gaul. Civil war had weakened frontier defenses. Constantius appointed his cousin Julian as Caesar in the west in the year 355. Julian had received a literary and philosophical education. He had little military experience when appointed. He nevertheless conducted successful campaigns in Gaul. In the year 357, Julian defeated a larger Alemannic force at the Battle of Strasbourg. He restored forts, crossed the Rhine, negotiated with local rulers, and improved tax administration. His soldiers became loyal to him. Constantius ordered part of Julian's army to move east for war against Persia. The troops resisted and proclaimed Julian Augustus in Paris in the year 360. Civil war appeared likely. Julian marched east. Constantius moved west to confront him but became ill and died in the year 361. Before his death, he reportedly recognized Julian as his successor. Julian became sole emperor without a major battle against Constantius. He had been raised as a Christian, but privately adopted traditional Greek and Roman religious beliefs. As emperor, he openly rejected Christianity. Christian writers later called him Julian the Apostate. Julian did not restore the earlier large-scale persecution. He proclaimed broad religious toleration and reopened temples. His purpose was not religious neutrality in the modern sense. He wanted to strengthen traditional cults and weaken the privileged position of Christianity. He attempted to organize pagan priesthoods with stronger moral discipline, charitable activity, and administrative structure. This was partly influenced by the success of Christian institutions. Julian prohibited Christian teachers from using classical pagan literature in education unless they accepted its religious foundations. This policy could exclude Christians from important teaching careers. He also allowed Christian groups exiled by Constantius to return. This may have been intended to encourage internal Christian disputes. Julian planned to rebuild the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. The project may have served several purposes. It contradicted Christian claims that the temple's destruction had permanent theological meaning. It also demonstrated imperial control over religious policy. The reconstruction did not proceed. Reports mentioned fire, earthquakes, or technical difficulties. The precise cause remains debated. Julian then launched a major invasion of the Sasanian Empire in the year 363. His army advanced along the Euphrates and reached to Ctesiphon. The Romans won engagements but did not capture the fortified capital. Julian ordered the river fleet burned and moved inland, expecting to join another Roman force. The decision left the army without much of its transport and supply system. Persian forces avoided a decisive open battle. They destroyed crops and harassed the Roman march. During one engagement, Julian was struck by a spear and mortally wounded. He died in June of the year 363. His reign had lasted less than 2 years. The army selected Jovian, a senior officer, as emperor. Jovian inherited an army deep inside hostile territory, with limited supplies. He negotiated peace with Shapur II. Rome surrendered several territories east of the Tigris and gave up the strategically important city of Nisibis. The inhabitants of Nisibis were required to leave. The settlement was regarded by many Romans as humiliating, but it allowed the army to escape destruction. Jovian restored Christian privileges and reversed Julian's religious program. He died in the year 364, possibly from accidental fumes, illness, or poisoning. The cause remains uncertain. Military and civilian officials selected Valentinian I as emperor. Valentinian appointed his brother Valens as co-emperor. Valentinian governed the west. Valens governed the east. This division was administrative and dynastic, not yet a permanent separation into two unrelated empires. Valentinian was an experienced military officer. He spent much of his reign defending the Rhine and Danube frontiers. He constructed forts and improved defensive systems. He campaigned against Alemanni and other groups. Britain faced attacks from Picts, Scots, and Saxons. A major coordinated assault occurred in the year 367. The Roman commander Theodosius restored order. His son would later become Emperor Theodosius I. Valentinian also faced the revolt of Firmus in North Africa. Firmus came from a powerful local family and exploited conflicts involving Roman officials and regional elites. The revolt was suppressed by Theodosius. Valentinian died in the year 375 after becoming ill during an angry meeting with envoys from the Quadi. His elder son Gratian had already been appointed co-emperor. Army officers also proclaimed Valentinian's 4-year-old son, Valentinian II, emperor. Gratian controlled Gaul, Britain, and Spain. The child, Valentinian II, was associated with Italy, Africa, and parts of the Balkans under the supervision of his court. Valens continued ruling the East. During this period, a major movement of peoples approached the Danube frontier. The Huns had entered regions north of the Black Sea. Their origins and early history remain difficult to reconstruct. Hunnic attacks disrupted existing political arrangements among Gothic groups. Some Goths moved toward the Roman border and requested permission to cross the Danube. In the year 376, Valens allowed a large group led by Fritigern to enter imperial territory. The Romans expected to recruit soldiers and settle agricultural populations. The operation was badly managed. Officials extorted the refugees, restricted food supplies, and sold provisions at extreme prices. Gothic families suffered hunger and abuse. The situation developed into revolt. The Goths defeated local Roman forces and moved through Thrace. Other groups, including escaped slaves, miners, and additional migrants, joined them. Valens returned from the eastern frontier. Gratian was moving toward the Balkans with western reinforcements, but Valens chose to confront the Goths before Gratian arrived. On the 9th of August in the year 378, the armies met near Adrianople. Roman reconnaissance underestimated the size of the Gothic force. Negotiations and troop movements became confused. Roman units began attacking before the army was fully prepared. Gothic cavalry returned to the battlefield and struck the Roman flanks. The Roman army was surrounded and suffered a catastrophic defeat. Valens was killed. His body was never certainly identified. A large number of officers and soldiers died with him. The Battle of Adrianople did not immediately destroy the Roman Empire. The Goths could not capture major fortified cities, and Roman institutions continued. The defeat nevertheless exposed the difficulty of controlling large armed groups inside imperial territory. Gratian appointed Theodosius as emperor in the East in the year 379. Theodosius rebuilt eastern field forces through recruitment, transfers, and agreements with Gothic groups. He could not simply expel or destroy all the Goths. In the year 382, a settlement allowed many Goths to live within the empire. They provided military service under their own leaders and retained a degree of internal organization. Such allied groups are often called foederati. Rome had used allied peoples before. The significant issue was the size of the groups, their military cohesion, and the weakening of direct Roman control. The details of the settlement are not fully preserved. Historians continue to debate how independent the Goths remained. Theodosius also took decisive steps in religious policy. In the year 380, he issued the Edict of Thessalonica with Gratian and Valentinian II. The edict endorsed the form of Christianity associated with the bishops of Rome and Alexandria. It identified Nicandria Christianity as the approved imperial faith. Other Christian doctrines were increasingly classified as heretical. A council met at Constantinople in the year 381. It reaffirmed Nicene theology and developed language concerning the Holy Spirit. The council later became recognized as the First Council of Constantinople. Theodosius issued laws restricting traditional sacrifices and closing some temples. The implementation of these laws varied by place. Pagan worship did not disappear immediately. Traditional practices continued privately and publicly in some areas for generations. However, imperial patronage had shifted decisively toward Christianity. Wealth, legal privilege, and political access increasingly favored the church. Gratian also reduced his association with traditional Roman religion. He declined or abandoned the title Pontifex Maximus and removed financial support from some public cults. The altar of victory was removed from the Senate House in Rome. This altar had symbolized Roman military success and senatorial religious tradition. Pagan senators requested its restoration. Christian leaders, especially Ambrose, Bishop of Milan, opposed them. The dispute represented a broader change in the religious identity of the state. Gratian's political position weakened. In the year 383, the commander Magnus Maximus was proclaimed emperor in Britain. He crossed into Gaul. Gratian's troops deserted and Gratian was killed. Magnus Maximus controlled Britain, Gaul, and Spain. Valentinian II retained Italy under the influence of his mother Justina. Theodosius initially recognized Maximus under an uneasy arrangement. In the year 387, Maximus invaded Italy. Valentinian fled to the eastern court. Theodosius marched west and defeated Maximus in the year 388. Maximus was executed. Valentinian II was restored, but his authority depended heavily on the Frankish general Arbogast. Arbogast held the position of master of soldiers. He exercised effective military control in Gaul. Valentinian attempted to dismiss him. Arbogast refused to accept the order. In the year 392, Valentinian was found dead at Vienne. The official claim was suicide. Some contemporaries suspected that Arbogast arranged his death. Arbogast could not easily become emperor because of his non-Roman ancestry and political position. He supported a Roman official named Eugenius as emperor. Eugenius was a Christian, but his government received support from senators who favored traditional cults. Theodosius refused to recognize him. In the year 394, Theodosius defeated Eugenius and Arbogast at the Battle of the Frigidus River. The battle was later presented as a religious victory of Christianity over paganism. Its causes were also political and dynastic. Eugenius was executed. Arbogast died by suicide. Theodosius became the final emperor to rule both the eastern and western parts of the Roman Empire at the same time. His reign also revealed the increasing political influence of bishops. The most famous example involved the city of Thessalonica. A riot in the year 390 resulted in the death of a Roman commander. Imperial troops then killed a large number of inhabitants during games or a public gathering. The exact death toll is uncertain. Later accounts gave a figure of 7,000. Ambrose of Milan refused communion to Theodosius until the emperor performed public penance. The event later became a symbol of church authority confronting imperial violence. The reality was more complex. Bishops depended on imperial support, while emperors also relied on Christian legitimacy. Theodosius died in Milan in January of the year 395. His sons inherited the empire. Arcadius, about 17 years old, became emperor in the east. Honorius, about 10 years old, became emperor in the east. Honorius, about 10 years old, became emperor in the west. This division was not intended to create two completely separate civilizations. Both courts claimed to govern one Roman Empire. Laws could be issued in the names of both emperors, yet the political, military, and financial administrations increasingly operated independently. The eastern government ruled from Constantinople. The western court moved among Milan, Ravenna, and other centers. The eastern provinces included Egypt, Syria, Asia Minor, and much of the Balkans. These regions contained many wealthy cities, major tax resources, and dense populations. The Western government controlled Italy, Africa, Gaul, Spain, Britain, and sections of the Danube frontier. Its territory was extensive, but many regions were difficult to defend and produced less reliable revenue. Honorius's principal military guardian was Stilicho. Stilicho had served Theodosius and was married to the emperor's niece Serena. He was of partly Vandal ancestry, but belonged fully to the Roman military elite. Stilicho claimed authority over eastern as well as western armies, supposedly based on the wishes of Theodosius. The eastern court rejected this claim. Competition between the two imperial governments weakened cooperation. A Gothic leader named Alaric became one of the central figures of the period. Alaric had served in Roman campaigns but expected a senior command and secure settlement for his followers. After the death of Theodosius, he led Gothic forces through the Balkans and into Greece. The precise status of his army changed over time. It included Goths and others who had served or lived inside the empire. Alaric was not attempting to destroy Roman civilization. He repeatedly sought official military rank, payment, supplies, and land. The Eastern government eventually directed his pressure toward the west. In the year 4011, Alaric invaded Italy. Stilicho defeated him at Pollentia in the year 402 and again near Verona. Alaric withdrew, but his army remained intact. The Western imperial court moved from Milan to Ravenna. Ravenna was protected by marshes and connected to the Adriatic Sea. It was easier to defend than Milan. It was also less central to the western provinces. Other groups entered Italy. A Gothic leader named Radagaisus led a large force across the Alps in the year 405 or 406. Stilicho defeated and executed him near Florence. Defending Italy required troops to be moved away from other frontiers. On the final night of the year 406, groups of Vandals, Alans, and Suebi crossed the Rhine into Gaul. The river may have been frozen, but this familiar detail is not certain. The crossing was not a simple invasion by three unified nations. It involved coalitions, families, warriors, and leaders moving under pressure and opportunity. The weakened Rhine defenses could not contain them. They traveled through Gaul, attacking or occupying towns and countryside. At the same time, Roman troops in Britain rebelled and proclaimed a series of emperors. The final and most important was Constantine III. He crossed from Britain into Gaul with much of the remaining mobile army. He attempted to defend the region and establish his own imperial government. Britain was left without effective central military support. Roman administration in Britain did not end on one exact day. Coin supply, official appointments, and military coordination gradually ceased during the early 5th century. Local communities had to arrange their own defense and government. In Italy, Stilicho's position deteriorated. He negotiated with Alaric and planned to use Gothic forces in imperial politics. Opponents accused him of conspiracy and of favoring barbarians. In the year 408, soldiers and officials loyal to Honorius arrested Stilicho. He was executed at Ravenna. Many families of foreign soldiers serving Rome were then attacked in Italian cities. Thousands of those soldiers joined Alaric. The Western government refused to satisfy Alaric's demands. Alaric entered Italy and surrounded Rome. The city had not been the normal imperial residence for many years, but it retained enormous symbolic importance. Its population depended on imported grain, especially from North Africa. A blockade created hunger and disease. The Senate paid Alaric a large amount of gold, silver, silk, and pepper. He withdrew temporarily. Negotiations continued and failed. Alaric supported a senator named Priscus Attalus as an alternative emperor, then later removed him. In August of the year 410, Alaric's forces entered Rome. The city was sacked for 3 days. Churches received some protection, and the destruction was not total. Nevertheless, property was seized, buildings were damaged, and inhabitants were killed or enslaved. Rome had not been captured by a foreign army for approximately 8 centuries. The psychological effect was profound. Christian and pagan writers tried to explain how the city associated with Roman power could fall. The Christian author Augustine began writing The City of God partly in response to claims that abandoning the traditional gods had caused the disaster. Alaric moved south, possibly intending to cross into North Africa. His fleet was damaged by storms. He died later in the year 410. His brother-in-law Athalf became leader of the Gothic group. The Goths moved into Gaul. Athalf married Galla Placidia, the half-sister of Honorius, who had been captured during the sack of Rome. The marriage connected a Gothic military leader with a Theodosian imperial family. Athalf was assassinated in the year 415. After further internal conflict, the Goths reached an agreement with the Western government. They fought other groups in Spain on Rome's behalf. They were then settled in southwestern Gaul, particularly around Aquitaine. This settlement became the basis of the Visigothic kingdom. The Visigoths remained formally connected to the empire, but their kings exercised increasing independence. The Western government also eliminated the usurper Constantine III. His forces had controlled parts of Gaul and Spain. He was captured and executed in the year 411. Other claimants continued to appear. Western politics became dominated by military commanders who governed in the name of weak emperors. Honorius died in the year 423. A court official named Joannes seized power in the west. The Eastern government refused to recognize him. It supported the young Valentinian III, son of Galla Placidia. Eastern forces defeated Joannes in the year 425. Valentinian III became Western emperor at the age of 6. His mother acted as regent. Several generals competed for influence. The most important were Boniface, Felix, and Aetius. Their rivalry consumed military resources. Aetius had spent part of his youth as a hostage among the Huns. He developed political contacts with Hunnic leaders. He repeatedly used Hunnic troops in Western civil conflicts. Boniface commanded in North Africa. Later sources claimed that political deception drove him into rebellion and caused him to invite the Vandals into Africa. The exact story is uncertain. The Vandals had crossed from Gaul into Spain after the Rhine crossing. They fought Roman forces, Suebi, Visigoths, and other groups. Under their king Gazaric, they crossed from Spain into North Africa in the year 429. The number of people involved is uncertain. One later source gives a total of approximately 80,000, including non-combatants. The Vandals advanced eastward through Roman Africa. North Africa was essential to the Western Empire. It supplied tax revenue, grain, olive oil, and other goods. Its wealthy estates and cities supported the state and senatorial aristocracy. Losing the region would severely weaken the Western treasury. Boniface resisted the Vandals, but was defeated. The city of Hippo Regius endured a long siege. Augustine, bishop of Hippo, died during the siege in the year 430. A settlement recognized Vandal control over part of North Africa. Gazaric did not stop expanding. In the year 439, the Vandals captured Carthage. Carthage was the principal Roman city of North Africa and a major Mediterranean port. The Vandals seized Roman ships and developed a naval power. Gazaric established an independent kingdom centered on Carthage. The Western government lost direct access to some of its most productive provinces. Tax revenue declined. The government struggled to pay troops. The loss of revenue made military recovery more difficult. Military weakness then caused further territorial losses. This created a continuing cycle. Aetius became the dominant general in the West. He managed relations with Visigoths, Franks, Burgundians, Huns, and Roman provincial elites. His position depended on balancing groups rather than restoring complete central control. The Burgundians had established a kingdom near the Rhine. Aetius used Hunnic forces against them in the year 436. The Burgundians suffered a major defeat. Survivors were later settled in the region around Lake Geneva and the Rhone Valley. This settlement contributed to the later geographical name Burgundy. In Gaul, local landowners and cities negotiated with military groups as imperial protection weakened. Some aristocrats continued serving in Roman offices. Others made arrangements with new kings. Roman law, taxation, landholding, and Christian institutions did not disappear immediately when control changed. New rulers often preserved useful parts of Roman administration. The Hunnic Empire became more powerful under Attila and his brother Bleda. The Huns controlled or influenced many groups north of the Danube and around the Black Sea. They extracted payments from the Eastern Roman government. Hunnic warfare relied heavily on mobile cavalry, but their armies also included subject peoples and allied infantry. The Eastern Empire fought and negotiated with them repeatedly. After Bleda's death, Attila became sole ruler. He launched devastating campaigns into the Balkans during the 1440s. Eastern Roman armies suffered defeats, cities were captured, and territory south of the Danube was raided. Constantinople itself was protected by the Theodosian walls. These walls had been constructed in the early 5th century and expanded into a powerful system of defensive lines. They included an inner wall, an outer wall, towers, terraces, and a moat. The walls protected the capital from many attacks for centuries. The Eastern government agreed to pay large quantities of gold to Attila. The tribute was expensive, but the Eastern treasury remained stronger than that of the West. In the year 450, the Eastern Emperor Theodosius II died after a riding accident. Marcian became emperor and stopped paying tribute to Attila. Attila turned his attention toward the Western Empire. Honoria, the sister of Valentinian III, had sent Attila a ring and requested help in escaping an unwanted marriage. Attila interpreted or presented the message as a marriage proposal. He claimed half of the Western Empire as Honoria's dowry. The claim provided one justification for invasion, though strategic and economic motives were also important. In the year 451, Attila led a large coalition into Gaul. His army included Huns, Ostrogoths, Gepids, and other subject peoples. Aetius assembled a coalition that included Roman forces, Visigoths under King Theodoric I, and several Gallic groups. The armies met at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains, also called the Battle of Shettlonian Plains, also called the Battle of Chalons. The exact location and number of troops remain uncertain. The fighting was severe. Theodoric I was killed. Attila withdrew from the battlefield and later left Gaul. The battle limited his campaign but did not destroy Hunnic power. In the year 452, Attila invaded northern Italy. His forces captured Aquileia after a siege. Other cities were attacked or abandoned. The Roman government had limited ability to resist. The delegation, including Pope Leo I, met Attila near the Mincio River. Attila then withdrew from Italy. Later artistic tradition presented Leo as miraculously turning him back. Practical factors probably included disease, supply shortages, the devastation of the region, Eastern military pressure on Hunnic territory, and the possibility of negotiation. Attila died in the year 453. According to a later account, he died from bleeding after a marriage feast. Other explanations are possible. His sons fought over the succession. Subject: peoples rebelled. The Hunnic imperial structure fragmented rapidly. Aetius had survived the Hunnic threat, but his relationship with Valentinian III deteriorated. Aetius attempted to arrange a marriage between his son and the emperor's daughter. Valentinian feared that the general intended to control the succession. In September of the year 454, Valentinian personally killed Aetius during a palace meeting. A court official reportedly told the emperor that he had cut off his right hand with his left. The remark expressed the belief that Aetius had been essential to Western defense. 6 months later, associates of Aetius assassinated Valentinian. The Eudocian dynasty in the West ended. A senator named Petronius Maximus became emperor. He forced Valentinian's widow, Licinia Eudoxia, to marry him. Gazaric of the Vandals used the political crisis as an opportunity to attack Rome. A Vandal fleet sailed from Carthage and reached Italy in the year 455. Petronius Maximus attempted to flee Rome. A crowd killed him. Gazaric's forces entered the city. Pope Leo negotiated with the Vandals. According to tradition, they agreed to avoid widespread killing and burning. The city was systematically plundered for approximately 2 weeks. Valuable objects were taken from palaces, temples, and public buildings. Members of the imperial family were carried to North Africa. The word vandalism was created many centuries later from the reputation of the Vandals. It does not accurately describe every aspect of Vandal society. The Vandal kingdom maintained Roman agriculture, cities, trade, taxation, and law in modified forms. Its rulers followed a form of Christianity commonly called Arian Christianity. Most Roman inhabitants of North Africa followed Nicene Christianity. Religious tensions developed, and some Vandal kings restricted Nicene bishops and church property. After the sack of Rome, the Western imperial government passed through a rapid series of rulers. A Gallic aristocrat named Avitus became emperor with Visigothic support. He struggled to gain acceptance in Italy and to secure enough revenue. The general Ricimer defeated him in the year 456. Ricimer became the most powerful military figure in Italy. He came from a high-ranking family with Suebi and Visigothic connections. He was a Christian of the Arian tradition. His ancestry and religion made his direct elevation to emperor politically difficult. Instead, he controlled a succession of Western emperors. The first major emperor supported by Ricimer was Majorian. Majorian ruled from the year 457 to the year 461. He was an experienced officer and attempted to restore effective government. He issued laws addressing taxation, municipal decline, public buildings, and abuses by officials. Majorian campaigned successfully in Gaul and Spain. He prepared a large fleet to invade Vandal North Africa. The fleet gathered near Carthago Nova in Spain. Vandal agents or raiders destroyed many of the ships before the expedition could begin. Without the fleet, Majorian negotiated peace and returned toward Italy. Ricimer turned against him. Majorian was arrested, deposed, tortured, and killed in the year 461. Ricimer then appointed Livius Severus emperor. The Eastern court did not recognize Severus. Several Western commanders also refused loyalty. One of them was Aegidius, who controlled Roman forces in northern Gaul. Aegidius established an autonomous domain centered around Sassans. This territory remained under Roman military leadership, even after imperial authority elsewhere in Gaul weakened. After Aegidius died, his son Syagrius eventually inherited control. Livius Severus died in the year 465. For nearly 2 years, the Western throne remained vacant, while Ricimer and the Eastern court negotiated. The Eastern Emperor Leo I selected Anthemius as Western Emperor. Anthemius was an experienced Eastern aristocrat and military commander. He arrived in Italy in the year 467 and married his daughter to Ricimer. The Eastern and Western governments planned a massive joint attack against the Vandal kingdom. The expedition began in the year 468. It involved fleets and armies operating from several directions. The commander Basiliscus led the main fleet toward Carthage. Ancient sources give extremely large figures for the cost and size of the expedition. The precise totals are uncertain, but it was clearly one of the most expensive operations attempted by the late Roman state. Gaiseric requested time to negotiate. He then used fireships against the Roman fleet near Cape Bone. Many Roman ships were burned, captured, or scattered. Other parts of the campaign also failed. The disaster exhausted enormous Eastern and Western resources. The Western Empire lost its best opportunity to recover North Africa. Relations between Anthemius and Ricimer deteriorated. Civil war began in Italy. Ricimer besieged Anthemius in Rome in the year 472. The city suffered from fighting and hunger. Ricimer's forces captured Rome. Anthemius was killed. Ricimer appointed Olybrius emperor. Both Ricimer and Olybrius died later in the same year. A Burgundian prince named Gundobad became the leading military commander in Italy. He appointed Glycerius emperor in the year 473. The Eastern Emperor Leo did not recognize Glycerius. He supported Julius Nepos instead. Julius Nepos was connected to the imperial government of Dalmatia. He sailed to Italy in the year 474. Glycerius surrendered and became a bishop. Julius Nepos was now Western Emperor, but his effective territory was limited. Visigothic power had expanded across much of Gaul and Spain. The Visigothic king Euric acted independently and captured additional Roman cities. The Western government made territorial concessions in exchange for temporary peace. In Italy, Julius Nepos appointed Orestes as master of soldiers. Orestes had previously served in the administration of Attila the Hun. In the year 475, Orestes rebelled. Julius Nepos fled across the Adriatic to Dalmatia. Orestes did not take the imperial title for himself. He placed his young son on the throne. The boy's name was Romulus. His maternal grandfather may have been named Romulus, while the name Augustus was given as an imperial title. Later writers called him Romulus Augustulus, meaning the little Augustus. The name carried an accidental historical symbolism. Romulus was named after Rome's legendary founder, and after Augustus, the first Roman emperor. He was probably a teenager and possessed little independent authority. Orestes governed in his name. The army in Italy contained many soldiers of non-Roman family background. They had served the empire and expected payment or land. A group of soldiers demanded 1/3 of the land in Italy. Orestes refused. The soldiers proclaimed one of their officers, Odoacer, as king. Odoacer led a coalition that may have included Sciri, Heruli, and other groups. He defeated and killed Orestes in August of the year 476. Odoacer then entered Ravenna and deposed Romulus Augustulus. The young former emperor was not executed. He was sent to live on an estate in Campania and may have received a pension. Odoacer did not appoint another Western emperor. The imperial insignia were sent to the Eastern emperor Zeno in Constantinople. A delegation informed Zeno that one emperor was sufficient for the whole Roman world. Odoacer requested recognition as patrician and ruler of Italy. Zeno replied ambiguously. He noted that Julius Nepos was still the legitimate Western emperor. Odoacer issued documents and coins that formally acknowledged Nepos for a time. Julius Nepos continued to rule in Dalmatia until he was murdered in the year 408. Odoacer then governed Italy in his own name while maintaining nominal recognition of the Eastern emperor. The deposition of Romulus Augustulus in the year 476 is traditionally called the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Contemporaries did not necessarily regard it as the end of an age. Italy still had a ruler. Roman senators continued to hold wealth and office. Roman law remained in use. Taxation and administration continued. The city of Rome still existed. Its bishop, aristocracy, churches, monuments, and population remained important. There was no single announcement stating that the Roman Empire in the West had ended. The year 476 is useful because no independent Western emperor ruled in Italy afterward. However, the process of transformation had lasted for generations. Britain had left effective imperial control early in the 5th century. Vandals ruled North Africa. Visigoths controlled much of Gaul and Spain. Burgundians held territory in the Rhone region. Franks were expanding in northern Gaul. Sui ruled part of northwestern Spain. Roman military and political institutions were divided among these kingdoms. Many new rulers wanted to participate in Roman civilization rather than erase it. They used Roman titles. They employed Roman officials. They issued written law in Latin. They sought recognition from Constantinople. They married into aristocratic families and supported Christian churches. The Eastern Roman Empire did not fall in the 5th century. Its inhabitants continued to call themselves Romans. The government in Constantinople preserved Roman imperial law, taxation, armies, diplomacy, and court institutions. Modern historians often call this state the Byzantine Empire, but that name was not used by its people as the normal name of their empire. For them, it was the Roman Empire. Eastern emperors continued to claim authority over former Western territories. In the 6th century, Emperor Justinian would recover North Africa, Italy, and parts of Spain for a time. Roman imperial history therefore continued long after the deposition of Romulus Augustulus. The Eastern Empire survived until the Ottoman capture of Constantinople in the year 1453. The fall of the Western Empire cannot be explained by one cause. Invasions mattered. Civil wars mattered. Loss of tax revenue mattered. Political instability mattered. The structure of the army changed. Regional rulers gained power. The two imperial courts competed instead of cooperating. Epidemics and population changes affected some periods. Currency instability harmed the 3rd century economy. The Western state lost wealthy provinces, especially North Africa. Without revenue, it could not maintain enough troops. Without troops, it could not protect the remaining tax base. The reliance on allied military groups was both a solution and a risk. Rome had always recruited foreigners and incorporated conquered peoples. The problem was not simply the presence of non-Roman soldiers. The problem was that the government often lacked enough money, authority, or military strength to control commanders who led their own cohesive forces. Some historians emphasize long-term economic and demographic decline. Others emphasize political decisions and repeated civil war. Some point to the geographic advantages of the East. The eastern provinces contained wealthy cities and reliable tax regions. Constantinople was easier to defend and better placed to the principal military frontiers. The West had longer exposed borders and more dispersed resources. Its political center in Ravenna was secure, but distant from Gaul and other threatened regions. There were also environmental and climatic changes, but their exact effect on imperial collapse remains debated. No single explanation accounts for every province and every decade. The Roman Empire had survived severe crises before. It survived the civil wars of the 1st century before the Common Era. It survived the year of the 4 emperors, the 3rd century crisis, major epidemics, and repeated invasions. In the 5th century West, several pressures occurred together while the central government steadily lost revenue and territory. Recovery became increasingly difficult. The empire was also transformed from within. Roman citizenship had once marked a privileged legal community. After the decree of Caracalla, most free inhabitants were citizens. Christianity moved from a persecuted religion to the principal religion of the imperial state. The Senate lost much of its governing authority, but remained socially prestigious. The emperor changed from a first citizen in Rome to a distant court ruler surrounded by elaborate ceremony. Cities, armies, taxes, and laws continued, but their organization changed. Even after Western imperial rule ended, Roman influence remained. Latin developed into the Romance languages. Roman legal concepts shaped later European systems. Roads, city plans, bridges, walls, and aqueducts remained in use. Christian institutions preserved Roman administrative boundaries and written culture. Kings who ruled former Roman provinces borrowed Roman titles and symbols. The memory of empire continued to influence political claims for centuries. For tonight, the long sequence can now become quiet. The Roman Empire began as a solution to civil war and lasted through many different forms of government. Its western half did not disappear in one night. It gradually lost the institutions that allowed a single emperor to command its provinces. The names and dates may now fade without needing to be retained. The history can remain where it is, complete enough for the night. Good night, and rest well.